Well, the NBA once again proves why it's the greatest sports league of all time, as even on a random Tuesday in September, you get notifications and alerts that'll just blow your mind and set the world on fire. As the latest blockbuster trade we have has Dame Lillard going to the Bucks, Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton going to the Blazers, and Nasir Little, Nurkic, Grayson Allen going to the Suns. Just a ridiculous trade that really nobody saw coming on a random Tuesday. And obviously, if you're a Bucks fan, this right here, unbelievable news and a great time to be alive. As getting Dame Lillard, you were already a finals contender, Eastern Conference contender, but getting Dame now, you are now the favorites to make the finals, beat Boston, beat Miami, and whoever else can contend to come out of the East. And look, if Dame went somewhere like Brooklyn, Toronto, that would have been fine, would have been great. But the balance of power in the NBA wouldn't have shifted so drastically like it did with him going to the Bucks. And even Dame going to the Heat, while definitely be a blockbuster trade, I wouldn't say that move directly would shift the balance of power in the entire NBA. As what this trade comes down to is Giannis and Dame as a duo. That right there is a combo nobody wants to see. As theoretically speaking, having someone like Dame Lillard who can pull from 35 feet off the dribble is a straight killer, combined with Giannis, who's in the paint 80% of the time scoring fast breaks. On paper, this duo was a match made in heaven. And building off the Giannis and Dame duo, what I definitely do imagine is Dame running a lot of pick and rolls with him, as well as Brook Lopez. As looking at Dame last year in Portland, with what I would argue is an average NBA center, off pick and rolls, he averaged 12.5 points, the most in the NBA, 11.1 possessions, the third most, and the fourth highest EFG out of the top 10 pick and roll scorers. So of course Dame was the one traded, but I think the biggest winner of this trade is indeed Giannis, as his life right now is going to get much easier. As looking at Dame on ISO scoring, Giannis to this point hasn't had a guy like Dame at that top tier level. As last year, he ranked 5th in the NBA at 5.7 points, 5th on ISOs per game, and 1st in EFG percentage of the top 10 ISO scorers. Now look, one minor concern I do have is now the Bucks' depth. But I think someone like Chris Middleton, especially last year late in the year, he definitely came on, especially in the playoffs. As before that, this dude was an abysmal shooter, having the worst year of his career. If Chris Middleton gets himself straight, gets himself right, this big three right here is the best big three in the NBA. And last year Milwaukee, one of their big time problems, especially minus Middleton, was fourth quarter play. As having someone like Giannis, of course, a top 3 player at worst, we all know that. But in terms of late game shot making, like a Kyrie Irving, a Dame Lillard, guys of that ilk, Giannis is not that. As the Bucks' fourth quarter offense ranked 21st in offensive rating behind teams like the Wizards and Atlanta Hawks. Having Dame on this team, a proven fourth quarter player, proven clutch time guy, it's going to be like Chris Middleton in 2021 on steroids. As last year Dame averaged 8.0 points per game in the fourth quarter, ranked 4th in the NBA on 47-34 and 90 splits. And from a selfish basketball fan perspective, having the small guard compared with the giant power forward, it's one of the more interesting duos you could possibly have. As again, these two guys' skill sets couldn't be more different. So in that regard, the offensive fit, I'm not worried about it in the slightest. And I think the pick and roll with Giannis, even Brook Lopez, who stats-wise is a top 10 roll man, that's going to be pretty dominant in the playoffs and for the regular season. And still having someone like Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, to space the floor, get easy buckets. I don't think Dame this year will average 30 points per game, but I think playmaking-wise, passing-wise, could average 8 or 9 assists pretty easily. Now, like I touched on briefly before, my concerns with the Bucks in this trade, of course, one was depth, and number 2 is pretty obvious, defense. As when it comes to Dame Lillard, stats-wise and eye test, he's like a turnstile on defense who'll get picked on come playoff time. And look, for a guard under 6'5", that's not unique in the slightest. Small guys get picked on routinely. So how do you combat that? You gotta have Chris Middleton step up and be old Chris Middleton. Because Dame, unfortunately, hasn't been a good defender and won't be in the future as he gets older. And if you think Boston and Milwaukee are the two best teams in the East, which I do, having someone like Tatum and Brown, the best forward duo in the NBA, I don't know what wings the Bucks have to stop either of those guys. Of course, having Giannis and Brook Lopez in the paint is definitely pretty valuable. But in terms of wing defense, getting past that first line of defense, it might be Swiss cheese. As Jrue Holiday for his entire time in Milwaukee was the point of attack on defense and allowed Giannis and Brook to really gamble and be highly aggressive. So looking past the Bucks, you have the Blazers and Blazers fans. If I was a Portland fan, I would feel very, very relieved, as some of those trade offers you got from Miami were completely abysmal trade packages. And getting DeAndre Ayton, Jrue Holiday being an all-star, Ayton having all-star potential still, that's a pretty good haul. And looking at your entire roster, Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons, even Jeremy Grant, that is not a bad team or a bottom 3 seed in the Western Conference. Now, am I saying this team will be a top 6 seed, a playoff lock? I'm not saying that. But at this very moment, the roster they have, I think it's a legit play-in tournament team, 9th, 10th, maybe 8th seed. And look, when it comes to Jrue Holiday still, you can flip that guy for an asset, a younger player, or even draft picks. Because Jrue being his mid, almost late 30s, doesn't really fit the timeline of what Portland has at their core. So again, this move for Portland, given your circumstances, is probably the best thing you can get in return for Dame Lillard. And last but not least, we have the Phoenix Suns. And look, when it comes to the Suns, every move they make, I'm just meh, okay? They were involved here, they did something at least. I guess moving DeAndre Ayton benefits chemistry, I guess that's a positive. But what it does more than anything, kind of compounds and really highlights how much of a mistake he was being the first overall pick. And getting someone like Nurkic to replace him, it's basically a 1-to-1 trade, as Nurkic last year had his lowest scoring year since 2017, hasn't played 60 games since 2019, and by all measures is an elite defender outside of rebounding. And looking at the Suns' overall roster still, it is heavily offensively focused. And I think even the Bucks to a degree are kind of going all in on high-powered offense. Not to the Suns' degree, but to a minor degree, getting Dame pushes your team to being more offensive. And the last thing I do want to touch on, when it comes to Dame Lillard this year, the pressure's been cranked up to a 10. And so the past 2-3 years, this guy has knowingly went out of Portland to be a contender and a championship team. Well, look, you finally got what you wanted. You're paired with Giannis, a top, 2, 3, maybe even best player in the world. If Dame doesn't win with this team, it's going to kind of further the narrative to he's never a winning player or a championship guy like in Portland. But if he wins, the upside on that is definitely pretty tremendous. And assuming they win the championship next year, what they're going to say about Dame 20 years from now, that he was a great player and NBA champion, but could have been even greater had he not been in Portland, wasting his career away. For Dame this year, there is a lot on the line, legacy-wise, to win a championship and get it done in Milwaukee. So that right there is the end of the video. As always, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.